That's right. That's right. What's up, Mindful Warriors? Welcome to episode number 30 of the Mindful Warrior, Exercise for the Soul. My name is Nathan Jackson. With me, as always, is Eben Britton, Gerard Bauer, and Gandalf. Oh,
Ooh,
wow, that was nice.
Love that.
And always, of course, Gandalf the Grey, lounging peacefully on the floor. What's up, Eb? How are you?
I'm great, brother. How are you?
Damn good, man. I'm feeling good.
Awesome, man. It's a beautiful day to be alive.
Sure is.
Sun's out.
Guns out.
Sun's out, guns out. Blue skies. We're not far from the beach. You can smell that salty air. It's beautiful, man.
That's right.
And we've got a pretty awesome guest lined up today, man. We've got a guy who really embodies what the Mindful Warrior is all about. This guy who's an all-pro NFL linebacker, played for the Saints, played for the Texans, played for one of my alma maters, the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he finished his career. And he transitioned his life from there, we'll find out how that went down, into being a master yogi. And that's Keith Mitchell. Keith, it's great to have you, my man.
Pleasure to be here, Nathan. Pleasure to thank you for having me.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Thanks for coming into our studio.
Yes.
It's awesome, man. Let's just launch into this thing. And you, like all of us, you suffered some one incredibly significant injury in your career. Tell us a little bit about that, and let's just start there.
Definitely. My first season in Jacksonville, I guess my seventh season of my career, playing with Jack Del Rio, as you played with him as well, or for him. We were playing the Buffalo Bills, and I was keyed on a particular play. I knew what they were running. You know how we study so much film, and I was trying to really just execute by making a big play. And I came up a step short, and I was just able enough to, land a hit on the guy. I believe it was Travis Henry. And this particular hit, for whatever reason, after taking thousands through my career of hits like this, or giving it like this, on this particular play, I end up on my back. And, I'm just like there. And I'm like trying to get up. I have an idea to get up because, we typically, for momentum, we want to, make a big hit and get the crowd going, get our momentum back and so forth. And on this particular one, there's nothing, man.
Wow.
Nothing.
You were getting no movement anywhere?
No movement. And the craziest thing, because you guys can relate, obviously, because you're the gladiators yourself, the first thing that came to my mind was I was embarrassed. I didn't think about my health. Right. I didn't think about what's going on. I was like, just get me out of here. I'm embarrassed. I'm here in this vulnerable position.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was really just an eye opener for me as I look back. But through that experience, it's like
I saw that hit too. I watched it. I watched that little clip, and it looked like one of those just hits. A hit you made, like you said, 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the body, just for whatever reason,
and
didn't absorb it correctly.
Yeah, and watching some of your highlights, man, you were a very high energy guy. You always brought it 1,000%. And I really appreciated that aspect of your game. Thinking back to my game, that's how I got there. And that thing you said about feeling embarrassed, man, I totally relate to that. That feeling of pure vulnerability in a moment where, we're these gladiators who, are carrying cities on our backs, and to lay a hit that you routinely make, and then to all of a sudden not be able to get up off the ground, man. It's incredible, man. Yeah. And that must have been just a devastating feeling. Yeah. What was the after effects?
Well, the after effect, I wake up in the hospital the next day.
Wow.
My mother was in town. My sister, my mother stayed with me, and I'm in the hospital. And just like since we were in middle school, Pop Warner, however you see the diagram of the player that they give the description on. You got to have the pads in, you got to have the helmet, the mouthpiece, and so forth. And we have this idea that if I have all this on, I'm gonna be protected because the doctor is co-signing this.
Right.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, okay, I'm waking up and I can't move still, And I'm like, and I'm asking the doctor, like, hey, what's going on with me? You know, we've been told the doctors have all the answers. So I'm asking the doctors, when can I play again? I'm not even thinking about walking again. This is our mentality.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, when can I play again?
Can I play next week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be ready to go next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, when can I play? Or something like that. And the doctor's like, I don't even know what this is.
Yeah.
And they had diagnosed me with a spinal contusion, kind of like, I guess, the Shazier from the Steelers.
Yeah, right.
He had it in his lumbar. I had it in my cervical, my C2 through C4. So I was just petrified, terrified that they didn't have an answer, and I was expecting them to have the answer.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah, we always give ourselves and we trust those medical people around us. In football, you get a little boo-boo, they fix it, and to see them confounded and not know what's going on with you, that's scary.
Yeah.
I relate to that with this back injury I had. I had a herniated disc that I was managing and playing through. It was going into the lockout. Came out of the lockout and we were in training camp, and this back injury was still with me. Couldn't feel my right foot on the ground. Have a conversation with Jack Del Rio. He says, Eb, just go get surgery. Enough of these epidural injections that I was getting, and because they weren't doing anything. And I have back surgery. Come out of it, man, I'm feeling great. Like back to my rookie year, life in my legs, can feel my foot on the ground. I'm getting myself back. I work myself back to the starting lineup. Week 4 comes, we're in Pittsburgh, and I can barely get out of bed. Wow. I'm seized up. My back is so seized up. Couldn't play that day. It took about another month and 2 more MRIs for them to figure out that I had an infection in the disc following surgery. And I get they admit me to the hospital, and they're like, our back doctor was like, I don't know if you'll ever play again. And I was like, fuck you, dude. I'm going to be ready for next week. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, it's because people have been telling you no as a football player your whole life. No, you can't do it. You're not going to make it to the league.
Right.
And so we learn to say, fuck you, I can do it anyway. And that's what leads you to success a lot of times, is proving the doubters wrong.
Yeah.
But on the back end, that can be a detriment because you don't know when to walk away, or you don't know when you should really walk away.
Yeah.
Right.
But you had no choice. You were laying in that hospital bed, and when they eventually found out what it was, that started the long road to recovery for you, right?
Right, exactly. And the nature of the competitiveness of the game, that's why we're holding on. Like, because I came in under Coach Ditka, and it's like you can't make the club in the tub.
Right.
I heard that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like and I also was undrafted. Speaking of that, with the draft coming up this weekend, I was undrafted.
Yeah.
And I was an All-American from 2-time All-American in college.
Right.
So I began to start as an undrafted rookie. So there was no way I'm giving up my spot.
You got nothing.
And that was my mindset my whole career.
Right.
And speaking of the back situation, I had that several times. Before the night before the game, back just freeze up. You can't even move.
Yeah.
And I'm calling the trainer, and those guys, they're just looking at me. I don't know what to do. And then the next day, I'm fine.
Yeah, and somehow you wake up and you're able to play that game.
Exactly.
Which is crazy.
And you have a great game. You're like, wow, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
And then the next day, you're back and they're like, oh, fuck.
Or you forget about it.
Right.
Until it happens again.
Until something new pops up.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
It's incredible what we put ourselves through.
Yeah. But that discipline, that mentality is really powerful because it can be honed.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned to do as evolving into who Keith, the human being, is, not just a football player.
Oh,
right.
And that's when it gets really fascinating.
Yeah.
Because what does that look like? That whole mentality, like we talk about every day. They interview the players who are like, what are you working on? I'm getting better. I'm getting better.
Right.
So we know what getting better as an athlete looks like, but what about getting better as a human being? What does that look like?
Right.
Yeah.
And that process for you started in that hospital bed, essentially?
Well, I was learned...
Did you, or as you were healing from that, were you still hopeful that you were going to play more football and be that football Keith? Or were you like, okay, well, now it's time for a new life or a new adventure?
No, the process was like I'm holding on to this person, this persona that's dying. Yeah, but that's all I had, and that's who I thought I was. So, in trying to hold on to that, I was learned conscious breathing.
Wow.
And what happens when you breathe? You ask this question to a lot of people. What happens when you breathe? Most people, we breathe naturally, right? But what happens when I make my breath my tool? How can I use it to heal? How can I use it to, they say how you breathe is how you live your life. If I have a short breath, I'm a reactive breath. If I have a elongated breath, I'm more contemplative. I let things process before I, give my answers and things like that. It's more slowed down. It's like under the intention.
I love that.
Yeah. So when I began to learn this, it became my playbook, sort of.
Yeah.
Like, wow, when I breathe, I take about 10,000 breaths a day. So on the inhale, the diaphragm pushes down. On the exhale, it pushes up. So I have 10,000 chances to massage my internal organs, moving the circulation of blood flow, carrying the oxygen into the body. That's my natural right for healing.
Amazing.
So I could contribute to my healing. So when I knew that, then I realized I don't have to be the victim in this.
Yeah.
And even though I had my highs and lows through the experience, because I was down for about a month and a half, and most of that time, I didn't have feeling.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did that come back? How did your feeling begin to come back?
Well, it was kind of like I've been frozen.
Yeah.
And I was thawing out.
Oh, wow.
And it was taking its time, I'm like, come on, hurry up, let's go. But it learned me patience. It learned me a lot of things like compassion even. Because think of it, as athletes, I mean, we're learned to push our bodies but not listen to our bodies.
Yeah,
Right.
no compassion for our bodies.
Yeah. And then we say we love it. I love it. Well, then
Love
I'm
this
like,
game.
and then I'm like, if I'm the person listening to that, I'm like, well, if that's your take on love, then I don't want no parts of that.
Right.
It's like shit.
Which tells you why so many relationships that football players have are so bad.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because if that's what self-love is, exactly.
But that's what we're conditioning ourselves, and we've been molded into this thinking.
Yeah.
But again, what happens when we find this new way of being as a human being? We can take those tools of leadership, of discipline, and things like that, and hone it into a really miraculous concept of being and living together. And as an example, you got players from all walks of life coming in that locker room, and when you play with different guys, or you even have this camaraderie just from being in the National Football League together, or because we know what it takes, right?
Yeah.
There's like a brotherhood that's already established there.
Yeah.
And it's like, I believe it transcends all the things that are happening in society even.
Yeah.
Whether you're black, you're white, whatever, we're brothers in this.
Yeah.
And I believe we can create a whole nother criteria of how society can approach these things too. Because we've been there, we understand that dynamic.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's pretty powerful, I believe, if we can find our voices like we're doing.
Yeah.
In
That's
the
what
world.
we talk about on this show, man. Is one of our hopes, I think, with this whole thing is inspiring the guys that are in it to start thinking in this way, to start cultivating their voice from within because of how much power we have. That we don't even realize.
Right.
Like you said, or, like you're sort of alluding to here, we get groomed into these warrior machines that don't think and don't really think about how we're feeling or what we want or, what's the best thing for us, even though we have this incredible platform as players in the NFL, one of the biggest, the juggernauts of sports. For those guys to be so lacking in their own voice, in their own insides, it's sort of remarkable. And our hope is to really help guys cultivate that and help bring that out.
And they don't have the room, and they're not given the ability to talk or to come up, to hone their communication skills, their vocational skills, to talk about what's in their heart, to have an opposition to a coach's plan, for example. You never say, "Hey, coach, I got an idea. Hear me out here."
Right.
That's a good plan, but how about my idea?
Yeah, exactly.
And so these guys enter the real world and the workforce and have no skill as far as articulating their own voice. And you got to learn a whole new language. coach. You got to study. You got to read, and that's a process, you know.
But Nate, I did politic my plays though. I was like, hey, this is my
Right.
blitz.
There is a little wiggle room for
You
that.
got to do that.
You got to politic your plays.
Yeah.
I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I think also on a bigger picture, you're talking about masculine energy. Period. The
Yeah.
nature of the male
Right.
was taught to suppress it. Suck
Yeah.
it up.
Oh,
Be
yeah.
a man.
Yeah.
Be a big boy. Boys don't cry. You
Yeah.
know? So we naturally, by the nature of just being the men, that's how we were kind of conditioned on top of being the warrior, you know?
And did you understand that kind of mentality while you were playing football? Were you suppressing it, but kind of felt that inkling, or was it something that came to you after the injury?
Well, you know, it's something that came after the injury, but even again, going through the nature of getting to be the gladiator, it's like, you know, a lot of times we say, I'm built for this. No one's
Yeah.
built for this.
Right.
You know, you went through a lifestyle that my father was hard. My
Yeah.
father was a military and a Christian preacher.
Right.
So I had hella discipline on me. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it was like, it was no days off.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
conditioned to be like that hardcore alpha male.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so I believe a lot of us went through that same dynamic to
Yeah.
some certain extent.
Yeah.
So through that, we began to be the gladiator.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
I have conversations with men all the time. Like, I mean, I had never known a man until I that held a masculine energy. That I had a male yoga teacher, and for him to speak compassion and be patient with me, I never heard a male do that.
yeah.
You know, so I never, and then I realized I had authoritative issues because you know because of the stuff that I still had lingering with my father.
Yeah.
But when I began to listen to someone holding this space, we call it in yoga, holding space for me, it allowed me to like really reflect on that and to like relax with that. Because we're looking at each other, sizing each other up, because we're kind of conditioned to like, how can I defeat you?
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I'm looking at you
Yeah.
like, okay, he's 6'6", okay, how can I, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, and that's when we don't need that.
Right.
You know, it's like we don't have to do that. But again, what you do as a practice begins to, you know, seep into the way you live your life.
Yeah.
Do you think
Absolutely.
there's room for that kind of mindfulness while you're actually playing and for the athletes? I mean, is there a compassionate coaching perspective that would result in winning and, you know, fewer injuries and things like that?
a better football player?
I mean, you
Or
know,
they just like,
it's just the nature of the game.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
a violent game. It's like going to war. It's like, you know, it's like, how do you go to war and
have
do it
compassion
nice?
for your opponent? Yeah.
Do it nicely. It's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
rules in war.
Yeah.
You gotta,
Right.
it's to win. So I prefer the player transitioning.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because that's what you're going to have to let go of, the old patterns, the old traits, and so forth. You know, but going in or taking a guy midstream, it could you know, it could compromise his career.
Yeah. One of the things we talk
Absolutely.
about on this pod is the difficulty for a football player to know when it actually is over. And so it's hard to get him on the way out and say, okay, it's over. Now here's what you got to think about. Because for some of us, it was like for you, it was a major injury that ended it. You knew it was over at that point. But a lot of guys like me, it took me a year and a half to realize no one wanted me anymore. And so I had to be like, oh, I guess it's over now because my agent's not even calling me back anymore. And now I'm lost at sea in a way, and I got to figure this out for myself. And I don't think the union really kind of shakes guys by the shoulder. I think they should offer like a yearly exit seminar where guys can go and be taught these things that you're talking about. There's really no opportunities for them.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. We actually got a chance to do that 2 years ago. The Players Association
That's great.
had their union meeting, and I'm like their union meeting, our union meeting
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
in Hawaii, and they had us come down and got to take players through meditation,
Nice.
yoga, and so forth.
That's awesome.
And that was interesting. But you're right. You know, we don't have that. It's really a mental issue, like really mental health issue.
Yes.
And it's the identity that we're holding on to that we've, you know, practiced so long, our whole lives. We don't know ourselves in any other fashion, you know, and a lot of us are going through life living like that, and it creates limitations in us just expanding, whether it be personality-wise or love-wise or all the things that we want to do for us, you know, building a new career. We're still over here trying to put on this persona, I'm the cool NFL or cool football player guy.
Yeah.
Well, that's hard because they always tell you to brand yourself as the NFL guy. And every question you get in the media is about football, and they offer opportunities for former players in broadcasting or coaching or business internships, but they never offer it in a way that distances you from that identity. It's always NFL guy, NFL guy. And
why don't you become a broadcaster and keep preaching the gospel, man?
Yeah, it's the same. You got to trumpet those same macho virtues, and there's really no transition the other way to like distance yourself from that brand, it feels like.
No, it's so true, and that's why I look at yoga and how I teach yoga and meditation. Yoga simply means union. Meditation is just from a perspective that I teach, it is contemplative thought, thinking, asking yourself questions and answering it unapologetically. And I look at it also as growth and development. So it's an opportunity for me to grow and develop as the human being. Again, not who played football, but the human being who can do all types of things. I'm not just linear.
Right.
I can grow into a whole spectrum of things and how that looks. And that's what we've been doing here as of the last, actually my journey's been like 13, 14 years now. I'm like thinking,
wow,
I'll be 44 in a couple months.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
And so you started practicing yoga as you were healing from that spine injury?
Well, it was a conscious breathing. It was a meditation. I read a book, The Art of Loving by J. Krishnamurti. No, Eric Fromm, who had J. Krishnamurti in it. But The Art of Loving, it changed my whole look on what I perceived this idea of love to be and how you can create your new reality. And I envisioned myself healing. And then on top of healing, I envisioned how I wanted my life to look like.
Wow.
My whole career, I had been at the top of the deal, the world, the cars, the homes.
Yeah.
But then I was isolated. I couldn't drive any of them. I was only in one room. I had someone basically feeding me. I mean, so you start to really contemplate, what is all this stuff worth,
Yeah.
Really, I'm killing myself out here to do what? Is it bringing me happiness? I never really had happiness. I really never had connection. I had a bunch of relationships, but they're all superficial.
Yeah.
So I began to really visualize how I wanted my life, the whole spectrum of my life to look.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things mentally that got me over the humps of the victimized, why me state and things like that. And that helped me through. That was my meditation practice. And later I found yoga.
Wow. So it started with the meditation and the breath.
Yeah.
And that's something obviously you still do every day?
Every day. And also nutrition. I really got into cleansing. Something, the next thing on top of the breathing, which really, when you talk about breathing and how we just described it, is detoxing your internal body. But and meditation is detoxing your thoughts. But then the body is like another memory, the fascia.
Yeah.
It holds all the things that we've ever experienced. They have a saying, the body doesn't lie. Yeah. So everything that the body that we've taken it through is there. So I wanted to cleanse my body from the fascia perspective. So I got into really the deep detoxing, and actually it's one of the companies I have now. I have a supplement company. I got into the herbs
Cool.
that create a lot of healing as well.
So talk to us a little bit about your nutrition practices back then to, what you do now.
I was telling someone, I was like, how Saturdays, before the game, we get the rookies to go get us food, right?
Fast food, yeah.
Fast food. Man, I used to eat a dozen glazed donuts and a half a gallon of vitamin D milk before the Saturday morning practice.
Oh my God, man.
Yes.
Donuts
so
on
absurd.
Saturdays.
You know it.
Oh, yeah.
And then on the plane, we would go
more
Popeye's chicken. We got the,
Yeah.
in New Orleans, it's like that chicken was special from us.
Food is out of control.
But we did that, and man, I think back and like, how did my heart not just pop out of my chest?
Yeah.
It's like, and we could run all day in that, right?
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did we do that?
How did we do that?
Because we were having ice cream like the night before.
Yeah.
9:30, 10 at night, right before the game. Ice cream and chicken wings. We'd just fill up a to-go box. And
Oh my God.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, and insane. So my notion was I need to cleanse.
Yeah.
And through this process, I've had so many former teammates die of heart attacks. And I don't know if you guys have experienced that yet, but like just guys, living that sedentary lifestyle, not keeping up with the regimens or some kind of physical activity, just dying in their sleeps, man.
Well,
I don't know if you ever seen your heart in a scope. They show your heart. I mean, our hearts, our lungs, from being athletes, they're all expanded. It's like huge.
right.
Yeah.
And so when you don't, maintain certain levels of activity, it goes through an atrophy.
Right.
So it dies out.
Yeah.
So you got this big heart that you create this muscle with, these lungs, and you're not doing activity. It's like it becomes just dead weight for us. Yeah, and a lot of stress on the body. So I began to cleanse my body,
Fasting?
Well, I got all kinds of nutritional deals with like create a new diet, colon cleanses. I've done colonics. I was telling someone I've done probably over almost 100 colonics, 22 or so colon cleanses, and now I'm vegan.
Oh, wow.
Go figure, out of Texas. And I've been vegan for the last 5 years, and I feel great.
Awesome, man.
Yes.
Well, you look great.
Thank you.
Was your nutrition then, somebody had to feed you, in those early stages, were you doing a lot of greens and vegetables? What did that detox look like?
Well, I just been getting to just like it was a bentonite clay psyllium husk compound, really just kind of cementing the internal organs and pushing that stuff through.
Yeah.
Living that lifestyle, fast food.
Yeah.
I used to eat like 2-3 Whoppers a night type deal.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it was just moving that out. I just felt I needed to move that out.
Yeah.
And that really just put me on my journey because you have more neural nets in the gut than you have in the brain.
Right.
So when I began to decongest that and push that through, it really gave me clarity mentally. To go through the hard times of what I was dealing with, the identity being sort of lost.
Yeah.
And then stepping into a new unknown territory of Keith and who the heck is that guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
So through that process, it helped me tremendously on top of the meditation.
Yeah.
And so for listeners out there who might want to change their diet, who might have been eating those Whoppers and having a really bad nutritional regimen, how do you start? What would you suggest is the best way to kind of go about cleansing yourself?
Well, yeah, I learned how to eat. Like, think of it. Who taught us how to eat?
Yeah.
We learned things from our parents and, we kind of incorporated those things. But really, I mean, we don't have a clue about eating.
Yeah.
So I think through cleansing, it taught me how to eat. I began to have so much energy, not even eating very much.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I was like, wow, this is a discovery. And then I started seeing what was coming out of my body. I'm like, that's in my body?
Yeah.
Majority of the people around in the population are carrying around 50 pounds of fecal matter.
Mm-hmm.
You know how they say you're full of, they're
shit.
not lying. They're not lying.
That's an accurate statement.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so I began to cleanse that out. And
so just drinking a lot of water and eating correctly will cleanse that?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It will.
And colonics as well?
Well, colonics, but now I got into really the deeper things with, I went to Honduras and I met this teacher, Dr. Sabi, profound nutritionalist, and learned the alkaline diet. And that's what I do now, the alkaline diet and what that's all about.
Explain that for us.
There's a concept of hybrids, foods, plants that have been, altered, cloned in certain senses. So the more indigenous plants I began to eat. So we have a specific diet that we follow, a solely alkaline diet, and it's been phenomenal for me because diet, I look at diet as information, and the information that we get allows the downloads for an expansiveness of consciousness.
Yeah.
To see clearer, to be able to create strategy of how I want to show up in the world, to fuel this intelligence that we're wanting to cultivate, of just being mindful. And with that, and it's the ability that we can take the warrior mentality, the discipline that we have, and put it into the direction of like serving our purpose, whatever that is.
Yeah. What are some of those foods, some of those plants that you're eating now?
Well, it's a lot of the supplements, the herbs.
Okay.
Sarsaparilla, which is good for replenishing the blood bladderwrack is good for cleansing the blood. You have sea moss. Sea moss is something for us. We've put our bodies through so much abuse. The bones, the calcium, the magnesium. Magnesium cures depression.
Right.
Yeah. If people just got magnesium, and even this woman on TED Talk, she's talking about the power of postures. The body can't hold two interpretations at once. Like you can't feel sad and happy at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but the body communicates 80% of our communication. And she says, you would put your arms up high, in a victory pose, and then try to feel sad. You can't.
Yeah.
So think of now when you're filling your body with the high vibrational foods.
Yeah.
Now another thing takes over.
Yeah.
Now you're fueling. It's like you're putting you putting the supreme gasoline in the Ferrari instead of putting the regular. Now that thing can function on a high level. So when you're functioning on a high level, everything is firing.
Yeah.
On the west,
go ahead.
Okay. Well, here on the west side, you drive around and there's a lot of restaurants, a lot of different ethnic restaurants. There's a lot of different grocery stores. There's a lot of food here. How do you know what's the good stuff to get? How do you shop in a way that kind of adheres to the diet you're talking about?
Well, I mean,
and do you eat out? I mean, how does that go?
Well, yeah. So I have to cook more. I have a chef here that I use a lot of times for my foods, and especially when I travel too. We have farmers markets, so we're fortunate here in California. There's a farmers market every day here, so I get to get involved with that. A lot of the Latin grocery stores I go to, the Mexican grocery stores, they have some of the this nopal plant, the cactus plant is profound for calcium, magnesium, and it assimilates with the body. And so that's the concept of alkaline, the plants that assimilate with us. So when it goes into our body, goes into our system, our body knows what to do with it.
Yeah.
And it just takes it in. And that's how we get through a concept of chronic pain, chronic fatigue. Chronic is just how long it's been there in the body. And because the food is depreciated, is devalued of nutrition,
right.
We're stuck with it. But when we give it the nutrition that it can build and repair with, now we can regenerate. Now we can have the energy levels that we once had. Now our bodies can feel good like they used to feel.
Yeah.
Just by putting in the right foods in our bodies.
I had the opportunity to spend a few hours over the last couple of days with this guy, Sadhguru. Have you heard of him?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Amazing.
He's a profound speaker.
Profound.
Yes.
And something that he talked about, he talks a lot about food, and there's so much mindless eating, like we've been talking about. But on a scientific level, when you get down to the science on a cellular level, our bodies are transitioning 7 kilograms of weight every 2 weeks. Like 7 kilograms of our body is dying off and being replaced. So when you start thinking about what am I putting into my body to rejuvenate that or to replace that 7 kilograms of weight that we're putting in, that our bodies are made of, it becomes like, damn, dude, I really want to put the best things possible into my body so that this machine that carries me through life is in the healthiest shape possible.
Yeah. Because you care.
Exactly.
You care. You want to know, And
exactly.
So a lot of us, we never really cared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. It's like,
hence the 12 donuts on Saturday morning.
Well, there you go. Just we didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And also that's in reference even to love. It puts it in that same context because these patterns are created from the same conditioning. It's like I'm telling you I love you, but I'm gonna give you this cake that is gonna give you sugar diabetes and high blood pressure and things like that.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want that kind of love.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah.
No, absolutely. So what, getting into your yoga practice a little bit more, do you have a specific, not genre, but there's different branches of yoga, Anusara, Bikram. What is your path?
Very simple, just a vinyasa flow.
Okay.
And, it's one of those things is like, in particular with men here, we if you think about the most violent game that we've played for is football. You think of it, 20% of it is really the brute force.
Yeah.
And about 80% is finesse. So think of how we're walking around in life. Everybody's all working all tough and hard. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, for what? Just relax, take it
Right.
easy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like, if I'm relaxed and I'm flowing, well, then now the things that I want to do can flow as well. If I'm tight in my posture, then all the things that I'm thinking, my thought process and patterns are going to be rigid.
Yes.
You know, is this a concept of as above, so below? That
We had last week, we had a guy on here, and he said, he made a great point. He was like, if you're constricted anywhere in the body, you're constricted everywhere in the body.
exactly.
I thought that,
like
I was
that.
like, fuck, man, that's brilliant. That's beautiful, you know, but continue.
Yeah, so it just allows us to flow, and so life is gonna, you know, we can set an intention. It's like we can say we're, you know, we want to live a certain way, and then life is going to present the opportunity of the obstacles, right? That's going to come in our way. So you're sure you want to live this way? Okay, now we're going to put this in your way. So now when life does happen, we don't fall out of pocket. We can stay in it. We can stay in the intention and say, wow, I'm learning from this. What is there to learn from this? You know, and then we can find, I like to say we can create default mechanisms, because we default as well, like the computer. When the computer, you search so much and it starts spinning.
Right.
Well, we do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because our vocabulary is, to an extent, is again, the condition is so
Deep.
so deep,
Yeah.
to the extent of the words that we saw growing up or heard growing up.
Yeah.
We do the same. I started realizing in my transformation, the words that I would speak are just the same things that my parents would say, my father would say. The same thing I would act out in frustration is the same dance that my father would do.
Right. Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
And then I began to realize, like, again, that's why I say consciousness is the only choice you will ever make, because all the other choices were made for you.
Yeah.
So I began to begin to connect and learn the words, create a vocabulary of expressing myself, you know,
Yeah.
and showing what that looks like. You know, so back to the vinyasa flow, that's the practice, you know, it's the practice of life.
Yeah.
And so when life happens, I'm not just tossed and turned with it. I can sustain my intention. I can hold my intention. And through that practice, I also learned compassion. I learned patience, you know. And the thing is that if you can't create it for yourself, well, how can you expect someone else to give it to you?
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
And so it's been the most profound practice for me as I, again, began to, you know, have my own growth and development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do yoga and you instruct.
I do, but you know, mostly I teach. I lecture about mindfulness. You know, it's the all over the awareness. You know,
Yeah.
and it's in all aspects of how we function. You know, using tools like, you know, I start studying NLP. You know, neuro linguistic processing. You know, it's
Talk to us a little about that.
learning language as a tool, and learning and understand the patterns that exist in our vocabulary, and realizing how we're saying the same phrases, we're accepting the same definitions, just like the food. It's like all these things are so parallel.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I begin to define love for myself. I begin to define myself as a constant, not stagnant, constantly growing and giving it permission to evolve. You know, these types of things. So when you learn it as a tool, now it can perpetuate what I want to do. It's like the evolution of the football player. Once he learns at his speed, he can't outrun everybody. So now he learns to run through people. Then he learns to stiff arm.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like tools to live and,
Yeah.
and function in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can create your own reality through your words, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you can build your own prison through your words too.
Exactly.
That's a really interesting thing you're studying.
Yeah. So it's an overall concept to just, again, to be in that high vibration of myself.
Yeah.
You know, and taking myself out of the competitiveness, taking myself, in particular for us as athletes, trying and feeling that we have to prove something to people.
Yes.
You know, the work is you know, I look at it as like the work that I do is enough. You know, I'm
Right.
enough.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you put equity in the building, you own it.
Yeah.
So I don't have to go around convincing people that this is my building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what's going in it. I know what I'm working to create it, to function, to fire on the higher level. So I don't have to go around saying, like, you know, look at me.
Yeah.
I can just hold space and it just takes care of itself.
That's a really powerful thing. I've definitely come up and confronted with myself in this process of transformation out of that football self, you know, is that I'm enough.
Yeah.
You know, just being here to hold the space. Like, I don't have to go around proving to everybody how big and how badass and how, like, smart and whatever it is.
Right.
You know, it's just being here is enough.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, but, you know, so in respect of how we used to be and how society looks around us, everyone's living and running those scripts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I found is, even by working with a lot of doctors, I have a program with the University of Rochester working with PTSD patients from, you know, military at Fort Bragg, you know, and seeing those same parallels with the doctors, seeing the same parallels with the military guys.
Yeah.
They're living in that script, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, just relax, take it easy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking before we were on the air about the medical work you've been doing in Texas, trying to help people who've been either diagnosed with something or told by the medical community they're going to have to take this pill forever, and you have different ideas about that. Could you talk about that work?
Yeah, what we've created, again, just different opportunities of how the mental health component can be addressed through the practices, through the mindfulness practices, and how we can assist and learn. And what we do is we actually go in with the primary care physician, and we get an opportunity to suggest a holistic regimen for people, whether it be creating new patterns. And the funny thing is, well, not funny, but the interesting thing is, when you talk about things like cancer and the cancer happening in someone, well, when you address it as patterns, like, okay, I did this to create cancer in my life, right? So I ate like this to create cancer in my life. So now when you think of it, okay, now how do I heal from cancer is, well, the things that I did to create it, well, I undo those things and to heal from it.
Yeah.
But that comprehension from people is a lot of cases limited.
Yeah.
Because they don't see themselves as being that kind of that powerful,
right?
You know? And then
so they want to keep doing the same thing, but just take this pill and keep eating the same way or keep doing the same things and think it's going to get better.
In a lot of cases, they feel that they say a prayer and then the prayer is going to alleviate the situation, like something's going to come and swoop through and just take it all out. That's how they've been conditioned.
Yeah.
But the empowerment here is like, okay, I know you believe in God, but do you believe in you? What can you do?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, and it goes back to those scripts. Like, you know, you can tell me what's in this book. You know, you can quote me scripture all day long, but then what do you think?
Right.
And that's where it goes silent. You know? So again, this
because they never really thought about what they
never
think.
thought about it. Yeah. But it's so many different ways. It's just the same thing happening all over the place. From nutrition, from the way we perceive ourselves, the habits we did here. It's the same dance.
Yeah.
That's why it's a holistic approach.
Yes.
Know? And we have to heal on the three planes that we exist. You know, the psychological, the physiological, and the physical. So we address it all. And we create new patterns. Again, like I said, when I put the patterns outside of myself, then I'm not claiming it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I have cancer. I've done things that create cancer in my life. So now it's outside of myself. So the more it's outside of myself, the easier it is for me to separate from it.
Yes.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And you're doing a lot of this work in Texas.
Yes.
Which I feel like it's revolutionary for the culture. I love Texas. I'm a big fan. You know, I had a lot of my best friends from college and in the NFL were Texas guys.
Yeah, it's good people in Texas.
Great people, man.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's, you know, what you're talking about, what you're bringing into that fold is just, you know, it's revolutionary.
Yeah, I like to think so, but I think that's the power that we have as athletes. And we know we're the people who set the tone. You know how we say set the tone on defense. You know, I know Nate, you're an offensive guy, but
so was he.
I was offense too.
Okay,
hey, but I played special teams with a lot of defensive players, and I learned that mentality.
Set the tone, baby.
The tone.
That's right.
Yeah.
Kickoff team.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So we set the tone, and we can set a new way of being. You know, we can do that. Yeah. And so it's so funny. Again, back at A&M, I posted something on my social media today because I'm doing this campaign, United We Stand, this organization that's talking about the new paradigm shift. And so it's, you know, my whole life, or in my college days, I in College Station, I performed as an athlete. So I knew the capacity of my physical worth. but now I'm going back to realize the capacity of my mental worth.
Yeah.
I'm like, the irony of that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's at the arena, the Reed Arena. It's a basketball arena, but it's a huge place, and we have thousands of people coming. So the irony of that, you know, that's the power that we have.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
You're really completing the circle, man.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But I say we because we hold the same.
Yes.
We have all the same tools. Because
Yeah.
to get to the level that you guys got to, I mean, you had to have it.
Yeah.
You couldn't be weak doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something about that physicality that we have that that people notice,
Yes.
that people look to. You know, they do see us as leaders. And that's why it's so important that we develop the language skills, like you're talking about, to be able to articulate who we really are and speak about that contradiction between who we really are and who we were used to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's really great work that you're doing.
Yeah, and that's evolution, and it looks amazing when that shows up, and you know, I think so many things happen and so many things change, you know, and the world looks whole different when men show up like that.
Yeah.
And holding the masculine space, you know.
Right.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. It's I think it's crucial at this time.
Yes, it's definitely crucial because there's a big, in my opinion. I don't know if we're off topic on this, but there's a big attack on masculine energy in the world.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. With this rising of the divine feminine. But also, and with that comes this shaming of the masculine, which I think that we are in the process of re-identifying what masculinity truly is about.
Right.
You know, I think it's a lot about what you're saying. It's holding that space, having that strength, yet incorporating it through compassion,
Right.
through love, through patience.
Yeah. In the transition, it's always an extreme, so to speak. The concept of Buddhism means the way of the middle. And they say we've always been in the middle. We didn't realize it, so we go from one extreme to the other. So even as we're shifting from this into this divine feminine, because it's coming from a victimized state,
Right.
it's like a bashing of the male.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So,
Yes.
so the thing is to combat that is to realize that, okay, compassion, patience, holding the space, not foregoing the masculine, right? But
Yes.
just holding the space for the feminine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we need both.
We need both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in politics and pop culture, it's always the extremes. It's always the extreme of one end yelling at the extreme of the other end,
Right.
and the people in the middle kind of watching it like a ping pong match, but not really saying much.
Yeah.
You know, the silent majority, I guess.
Yeah, and that's another thing that you make me think about, because we've talked about the nutrition from a plant grain concept, but now the first and second generation of the healing is the human dynamic of the medicine of the human being. Realizing when I understand that I can heal myself with my tools, my breathing, the words I use and things like that, you know, my patterns, well, then I can heal myself. And then the second nature is how I can share with you, Nate, to help you and encourage you and to boost you up. That's the medicine of exchange, connectivity, community. You know,
Yeah.
so I think that's another thing. When we as men can speak our voice,
Yes.
we allow and create space for other men who've been thinking it, but too afraid to share their own ideas.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But sometimes it's hard to express those ideas through the mediums that are popular, like social medias and stuff like that. I feel like, you know, sometimes if you post something that is completely from the heart and true and balanced, it really gets no love or no real attention. The things that get attention in social media is like the extreme one way or the other, calling someone out, calling someone a jerk or whatever it is. And I don't know. I mean, what do you think about social media as it pertains to this discussion?
I think it's a perfect platform. I mean, you guys have been brilliant enough to create your own platform to broadcast the information, but I think, you know, you'd be surprised the stuff and how people perceive you and how they're looking at your stuff. They may not quote or press a like on it, but they're reading it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's sinking into them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's sending that little ripple out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's weird, but because you don't see that, and so the only things you do see are when people do interact, and it's usually the trolls who want to start shit.
Right.
Yeah, and so it is a disconnect between what you're putting out there and where it's landing. But like you're saying, you got to have faith that it is actually working.
Right.
That when you speak your truth, people are seeing that and
Yes.
absorbing that.
Yeah, and that's what you have to trust, like you're
Right.
saying.
Yeah.
And knowing it's coming from your heart, and it's gonna be received.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's powerful.
Yeah, one of the most I talk about it all the time, and to all you new listeners, we're really stoked to have you guys on board. Since we've started this show, the amount of emails, messages through social media from mostly men saying how much they appreciate us speaking our truth and telling our stories, because they're like, man, I relate so much to what you guys are talking about. And it's like, man, that's opening up. If that's just one person it affected in a positive way, especially a man in this time, it's like, man, this show is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
For all the guys who played in the NFL, there's 10, 20, 30 collegiate football players out there who are dealing with similar things. And athletes of all sports, men and women, are trying to figure out their identities outside of the game. And soldiers as well. We found a lot of correlation with people who served in the armed forces as far as moving on from that life that have hit us up, and it's been pretty rewarding.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about how you've seen so much crossover with the military vets. We had a vet on here a few episodes ago, Seth Smith from the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance, and everything he was talking about is like, man, it could have been talking about a football player. It could have been talking about an athlete.
Yeah. Same mentality, that same competitive high nature, but actually their lives are on the line for real.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever been to Fort Bragg, but it's so funny because when I went to the Green Berets talking about meditation, they were like, "Okay, you're gonna get us to meditate, then we're gonna get you to jump out of a plane."
Oh my God! Did you do it?
Of course I did.
Wow,
Nice.
man!
So we're gonna record you. So we're gonna take you 15,000 feet up in the sky, and we're gonna toss you out the plane. Let's see this meditation.
Yeah, then you really needed that breath control, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, amazing.
For sure. But that same competitiveness, man, that's the thing. In the nature of competitiveness, and when we look at the nature of the human being as we get older, the things that we used to do, is setting us up for a failure.
Yeah.
Because we can't sustain that.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to have a drop-off, unfortunately. That's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
So we have to get over that. And but when we get over that, we take so much burden off our shoulders.
Yeah.
And we can just kind of, again, just relax, take it easy. And we've been talking a lot with the males, but the women can get a lot of information from this as well.
Yeah.
Because, again, when you talk to, in regards to relationships, the men's inability to even have the vocabulary right away, to be able to share his feelings, and the woman's constantly asking him to talk.
Yes. Yes.
What do you want me to say? They don't have any words.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's for them to be compassionate, to really relate to the individual and not to the idea that you have
about what a relationship is supposed to be.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
So it's a learning curve for all of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I also want to touch on, because we were talking about this before we came on the air, Eben and I met in the cannabis space. We talked a lot about cannabis. A lot of our listeners out there are cannabis folks. They believe in the plant. But we were talking about something interesting about, the source of this plant and what you're smoking or what you're ingesting.
Yeah.
Talk about your thoughts on cannabis and healing in general.
Yeah, so when we first had that conversation, or started that conversation, the question I asked, do you eat a GMO?
Yeah.
Right? And
the answer is no.
And for those out there who don't know what a GMO is?
Genetically modified.
Cool.
Yeah.
Organism,
yes.
Okay.
That sounds scary.
Sounds scary.
That means a clone, basically, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the question, and obviously the answer is no. Well, then when you take a cloned plant, like a lot of the growers like to do, the male and the female, so they can the proprietary blend or the seed. They like to keep it a secret or keep it in house. So when they clone the plant, well, they're doing a genetic modified construct.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a hybrid at that point.
Yeah.
So now so what happens with that plant for is the healing attributes, we don't really know. And a lot of it's, again, you're still taking in some cases pesticides, and then they're adding the high THC levels in there.
Yeah.
Someone told me about a strain, because really the original ones, when we first, were smoking. I didn't really smoke. It's my mother and father listening,
Of course not.
But back in the day, but they had seeds in it, right?
Right.
And now it's no seeds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then I was the THC levels were like probably about
It's like a human being
Oh
with
my
no
God.
genitals.
0.5%,
Must have
or
been
1%.
Yeah.
And now they're shooting up to like 30, 50%
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the THC levels.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an astringent first and foremost. So it's gonna dehydrate your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna dehydrate your prostate as a male, and then for the woman, it's gonna dehydrate the uterus. So
Does that mean that just drinking a lot of water will counteract that?
well, you would have to drink a lot of water depending on how you smoke.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got the synthetics, the chemicals, and what the side effects of those and the pesticides. Now we're doing the same fight that we're doing with the genetic modified foods.
Right.
We don't know what that is. We don't know what that does. And now that it's becoming legal in a lot of cases, I mean, we have to really be mindful and really, for us to get educated on really what are we doing.
Right.
Because even it makes me even nervous when people want to become vegetarians, vegans.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about soy. We're not supposed to consume soy.
Yeah.
So you really have to get educated, not just follow a trend. Really
Yeah.
get educated about what we're doing and how we can be mindful and create the paradigm that we want to create. Because I believe a lot of the growers the first initiative is to heal people and give
Yeah.
something that can benefit society. So we have to, if that's really what we want, we have to do the research.
Yeah.
Do the study to really go in and find out, well, why is the THC level so high?
Right.
And really understand what CBD is really
Right.
about.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so
I think, can
no,
I just
yeah,
say
yeah,
one
Joe,
thing?
do it.
I think we are seeing what GMOs do to people.
Oh, yes.
We might not have the science and the research behind it, but we are seeing the effect it has on the human body, from cancer to obesity to mental fog and depression and anxiety, all these things that run rampant in our society, in America in particular. I think we're seeing that.
Yes.
So to your point, I mean, first of all, if you guys are listening to The Mindful Warrior and you're still eating GMOs, let's get off those. Let's stop eating GMO food. Let's start eating organic as much as possible, local foods.
So anything that's not organic is probably GMO?
No, I don't think so. But, then you're looking at what pesticides have been sprayed all over our foods and all those issues. I think that there are certain foods that have a higher tendency to be GMO.
Mm-hmm.
Such as?
Like a wheat, a corn,
Yeah.
things like that.
Okay.
Wheat and
Oats.
corn.
Right.
Yeah.
Some fruits. I know papaya is high percentage of GMO. Papaya, for whatever reason.
What are your thoughts on fruit?
Well, fruit, I mean, we have a whole list. Again, I follow the Dr. Sebi's food code. So I actually have a company, a Meta Nutrition. We have the foods posted on our site.
That's awesome.
Definitely go check it out, a Meta Nutrition, AMETTA Nutrition. And just to give the insight about the foods and just being detailed about what I'm consuming, being mindful of that, yeah.
Absolutely.
But sugar, even in its natural state, I mean, natural sugar is okay to some extent?
Well, the sugars that we use, like more of a dates help agave, things like that.
Right.
What's your feeling on stevia?
It's a synthetic.
Yeah.
It has feelers. I don't really know what that is.
So you don't mess with it.
Nah, because if you put something, I posted this. I mean, you'll probably get a kick out of my Facebook page. But if you ingest anything that has no nutritional value, it's going to do your body harm. In regards of inflammation,
some way,
acid, in some way.
Because your body doesn't really know what to do with it.
Doesn't know what to do with it.
Unless it's water.
Well, it depends on considering what water it is. Now, like a lot of times they want to do the alkaline, but they're splitting the molecules in like a lot of these companies when they say alkaline water. I would suggest just a spring water.
Yeah.
What about tap water through a Brita filter?
Well, that could be interesting. That'd be better than an alkaline concept.
But the spring water is the ideal.
Yeah, because the body can assimilate with that. It's holding minerals, So the idea is to get 102 minerals because all the things that we talk about for is proteins, and you ask someone, where do I get my protein? You ask someone, what are proteins? And they don't have a response.
Right.
But your body has the ability, it has adaptogens.
Right.
So when you synthesize minerals, the body can synthesize through peptides a branched chain aminos to give you proteins to support your lifestyle. And what they're doing is synthesizing aminos for more or less the bodybuilding. But if I don't need, if I'm not working out, why am I focusing on the synthetic for bodybuilding?
Right.
You know, my thing is brain proteins, you know, things like that. More fats, like, you know, from the avocado, or, you know, the oils like that. So it's like, you know, just really understanding like some of this stuff and breaking it down so we know how, again, to nurture ourselves.
And so all these things you've been talking about, you've learned post-career.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I had no clue.
Right.
And even like back to the foods, you know, science says by, you know, person eating like fast foods, right, the palate mutates. So when I eat like a natural food, I have a distaste for it.
Right.
So how insane is that?
Yeah.
Well,
I've mutated my palate by eating the processed faux foods.
Right. You've developed the taste for that stuff.
Well, then that goes back to what you said. Now we're seeing the effects of people running around eating these faux foods.
Yeah.
That's showing up all over the place.
Right.
but you can unlearn that.
You can unlearn that.
And you can do it the flip. Because I know I've experienced eating the way I do, very heavy plant-based, high fats. I do some lean meats, as grass-fed and as local as I can do. Flipping that to when junk food does come around, I have a severe distaste for it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, man, that's way too sweet. That's way too salty, whatever it might be. You know, It doesn't even taste like food at that point. So I think we can condition ourselves either way, to the positive or to the negative.
Yeah.
You know.
And we've seen it on the extreme levels, right? Because you guys played for multiple coaches.
Yeah.
So it's like they're running the same plays called, you know how they say the formations, but everyone has a different name for it.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll have a coach doing it like this is kings and queens formations, and then someone else will come and say this is 11 and 12 personnel.
Right.
And we have to flip it.
Right.
Yes.
So we've seen it done on a high competitive level. So
Yeah.
if we've done it in that level, then we know it's possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Keith, is there anything? Tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can read up more about you, your social media, all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. My Facebook, IG, Instagram is Keith Mitchell 59. My website is keithmitchell59.com. My nutritional site is Ameta Nutrition, AMETTA nutrition.com. And please check us out. We're all over the place and looking to create, and we'll be in a city near you at some point.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, brother.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I love what you're doing. Yeah. And for everyone out there at home, keep on following us, keep on reaching out. We got that 420 Bleacher Report thing going on with Eben, working out. And subscribe and review us, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Send us your stories on Twitter at MindfulPod, Facebook at Mindful Warrior Podcast, Instagram at Mindful Warrior Podcast. This one's brought to you by Athletes for Care. Exercise for the soul. Train your mind. Sharpen your instincts. Everybody did a really good job on the pod. If you feel compelled, jump on it.
Everybody did a really good job on the pod.
I'll say it.
Everybody did a really good job on the pod.
Oh yeah, everybody did a really good job on the pod. On the pod, yeah, Eben.
Yo.
You did a really good job on the pod.
Thanks, Nathan.
No, wait till the next beat.
Nathan.
Yeah.
You did a really good job on the pod.
You know what? Keith, you did a really good job on the pod. Thanks for coming out.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
my
having
brother.
me. Thank you so
And
much.
Jed, as usual, you did a
Really good job on the pod.
on the pod, on the pod, on the pod.